What is going on, everybody? Welcome to a deep dive into the number 2 team in my power rankings, the New Orleans Saints. Now, coming in at number 2, I even myself am a little surprised that I am actually much higher on this team, I think, than the general consensus. Look at where Vegas has this team, 9.5 win total, not up there with the Green Bay, Pittsburgh, New England, Philly, Minnesotas of the world in terms of odds to win the Super Bowl. But personally, I think they are right there with all those teams, even above a lot of those teams I just listed. Another reason I'm surprised is I do tend to be much less radioactive from year to year, referring to teams that kind of have breakout seasons. And New Orleans sort of fits that bill, right? Outside of Drew Brees, they've kind of been iffy for the better part of about 5 years, come in last year and really break out after one of the most historic rookie classes in my lifetime. But when I look at this team, they are one of 2, maybe 3 teams with Philadelphia, and then you could maybe argue the Chargers that are set to have a top 10 offense and a top 10 defense. You could maybe argue that for New England. I think their defense is at best, right at number 10. Not sure they have the personnel for it. But that goes a long way. So obviously there are a lot of people to talk about here. You don't reach top 10 offense and top 10 defense without a lot of talent. So we're going to get right into it here. Rank this team positionally, how they stack up with the rest of the league. Then we'll take a look at the schedule and what I think in terms of win expectations for this team this season. So starting at quarterback, not going to spend a whole lot of time on Drew Brees. I got him as the number 3 quarterback in the NFL. He has aged very well. He definitely has all of the tools he still needs to play at an elite level. Still moves very well in the pocket, still has a very strong arm. Not necessarily an elite top 10 arm by any standards, but gets the job done. I do think he's a guy that takes care of his body, avoids too many big hits, should have a nice little easing out of his career, slowly regressing, and should be a guy who, unlike Peyton Manning, can kind of retire on top. I don't know if he's going to win, but should be playing at a decent level, I think, when he retires, which in my opinion, will be after next season when his contract is up. Maybe he can outlive that, we'll see. But a more interesting guy to talk about here is Teddy Bridgewater, recently acquired for a 3rd-round draft pick. Now, sure, he is a prospect to be the starting quarterback of this team after Drew Brees. I don't think this team is necessarily taking that as a guaranteed approach here. He's got a contract year. They really need to make sure the medicals check out before they give him any kind of a long-term deal after this. What I think the Saints were really prioritizing in making this trade is they were looking at last year and seeing how big of an impact having a good backup quarterback had on Philadelphia, Minnesota, on the flip side, Green Bay. This is a team that has gone all in on this year, trading their 1st-round pick this year to go get an edge rusher, knowing that this is their window. And I think Teddy Bridgewater is more life insurance than an investment. Now, some people call life insurance an investment, but this is a football channel, not a finance channel. So I love Teddy Bridgewater. I liked him coming out. He's got that infectious smile. I do think he's got kind of that Alex Smith type of ceiling thing going in terms of, he's not really commanding the ball around the entire field, but he is pretty accurate, good decision maker, mobile, all that. I'll definitely be pulling for him. I'm excited to see how this all plays out. The one thing I will say, whether it's Teddy Bridgewater or another future prospect they bring in here, they're going to be in a really good spot to turn into a good player because you got 2 young tackles and a great young rookie class that just came in last year, a good running back. You got a young number 1 receiver, Michael Thomas. So whether it's Teddy or another guy, the quarterback play here I don't think is going to fall off the map when Drew Brees leaves. I think this team has done a good job to get ready for that transition. I don't know if they have the guy that's going to take over quite yet, but, we'll see. So let's move on, talk about the running backs here. The best 1-2 punch in the NFL. I've got it ahead of Atlanta, division rival. Both these guys can run inside the tackle, outside the tackle. They both catch the ball extremely well. They can both run with power. They're both elusive. Both of these guys would be the number 1 running back on a lot of football teams. Talking about Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram. So I really like these two. You just keep them fresh. You can really do everything, whether you've got Kamara or Ingram on the field, like I just said. Now, from a fantasy perspective, I have been staying far away from Alvin Kamara, who's going in the 1st round of drafts. super talented player, but I do think it's going to go back to being a pretty solid split between Kamara and Ingram. I don't think there's a huge talent differential between these two. Kamara was absurdly efficient last year, and while I think he's going to continue to play at a high level, I don't think statistically he's going to be able to repeat what he did as long as he's splitting carries with Mark Ingram. And then this team did just bring in Mike Gillislee. He's going to be kind of just the relief pitcher until Mark Ingram comes off that 4-game suspension. And then I would assume they're just going to cut ties with Gillislee after a few weeks. And then they draft Boston Scott, kind of a shifty guy in the 6th round. Keep an eye on him. So then let's talk about the receiving core here. I've got it tied for 14th. You got Michael Thomas here, who has even continued to grow on me. I loved him coming out of the draft. Had a 1st-round grade on him. He goes in the 2nd round. He's continued to develop every year. He's got every quality you look for in a true elite number 1 wide receiver. He's got the work ethic. He's got, sneaky burst and quickness. He's a better athlete than I think he gets credit for. Great hands. He's got the size. So I think there's a good chance that Michael Thomas continues to grow as he nears a new contract. And I think by the end of the year, we probably will be talking about Michael Thomas with AJ Green, DeAndre Hopkins, maybe even Antonio Brown if Brown takes a step back, but as Michael Thomas as one of those tier 1 guys. And right now I've got him as the 7th best receiver in football behind Keenan Allen. And then after him, you got a bunch of guys who kind of have their role in this offense. Now Ted Ginn I think has actually been underrated since he was overrated, if that makes sense. He was a big part of Cam Newton's MVP season. He was actually really good that year, and he's done a good job replacing Brandon Cooks here. If I have the option to have Ted Ginn for $5 million or Brandon Cooks for 16, I'll take Ted Ginn 10 times out of 10. I think the difference between those is much less than a lot of people would say. And then you got Cameron Meredith. We're not hearing very positive reports coming from him. He could be kind of a second half of the year guy that kind of starts to become a part of this offense. Maybe if he can continue to get healthy. But really, anything they get from him, I think they're going to look at as house money. They draft Traquan Smith in the 3rd round now. So this is what I'll say about Traquan Smith. I had a 5th to a 6th round grade on him. My comparison for him was Zay Jones, who I also had a 5th to a 6th round grade on. Similar type of player, fine hands, a decent athlete, not a great route runner, a little thin. They clearly see a lot more in him than I do, and I haven't heard much about him from training camp, but the opportunity is going to be there for Traquan Smith to be the number 3 here. So he'll be competing with Cameron Meredith throughout the year. You got Austin Carr here, who fits every single white slot receiver stereotype you could ever imagine. I wouldn't be surprised at all if he becomes the next Cole Beasley, Julian Edelman type. And then Tommy Lee Lewis, kick returner who actually does some more things offensively than you might expect. Super, super fast and quick. I think he's going to have some spark plays here and there. At tight end, Benjamin Watson's kind of just a move the sticks 3rd down tight end, coming off a serious injury at his age. His catch numbers could end up looking all right, but I'm not expecting much from him. Josh Hill, whatever. Tight end's not going to be a big role here. But as a whole, this receiving core is going to get the job done. Michael Thomas obviously helps this all out, but I do think it's going to be definitely good enough to sustain a top 10 offense here. And then you move to the offensive line. Super valuable group here, ranking 6th. Got a pair of really, really good tackles, Teron Armstead and Ryan Ramczyk, who was, I think, the number 1 steal of the draft last year. Forget Kareem Hunt, forget Alvin Kamara. You get a star right tackle at the end of the 1st round in the world today where you just can't find linemen. What a pick to have Ryan Ramczyk. They got the interior. It's fine. It's pretty good. Andres Pete still hasn't really met his 1st round expectations from being drafted 4 years ago. Max Unger, really good center, does have health issues. Larry Warford, very solid veteran guard there. Above average starter for sure. But really, when I think about the Saints offensive line, I think of those 2 tackles and what they can do with those guys out there. And then keep an eye on Will Clapp. We mentioned Max Unger's injury issues. Will Clapp out of LSU, hometown guy, could see him stepping in as a center if anything were to happen to Max Unger and offer some decent depth there. So from quarterback to offensive line, this offense is just loaded. I've got him number 3. I don't necessarily think explosive offense when I think of the Saints. I think of ball control. I think of dominating on 3rd downs. I think of a lot of weapons. controlling the line of scrimmage, just really, really solid offensively. And you always got that little sidearm of, if it turns into a shootout, you do still have Drew Brees there, who, needless to say, is comfortable getting into shootouts, especially with the surrounding core he's got here, which is probably the best he's had in a long time, probably since Jimmy Graham was there. So the offense is going to do their thing, and then defensively, you got a ton of talent here. I've got him ranked 7th for defense. I think a lot of people are projecting a step back for this defense, and I might even be doing that and calling them the 7th ranked defense. I think they did rank in the top 5 for defense last year. So, I don't know if they'll repeat that, but on paper, this team is actually better defensively than they were last year. Could be other factors that move their defense down, like other players returning from injury on other teams, schedule. You guys are smart. I don't need to explain why you can get better on defense on paper and actually take a step back statistically, although there are a lot of people that don't seem to understand that. Anyway, let's start with the pass rush here. Super good pass rush. I've got him ranked tied for 9th. Cameron Jordan, one of the 5 to 8 best edge rushers in the game, but also dominates in run defense. Technically, Alex Okafor will be starting on the other edge, but I don't think it's going to be long before Marcus Davenport becomes the guy they want to feature as the edge rush on the other end. But 1 through 3 there, you've actually got some good players. Okafor is not a joke. He played at a really high level last year, did suffer an injury though. And then the Davenport trade, now that's interesting. I would not have made that trade, no way. Move up 10 spots to get Marcus Davenport, especially in hindsight when you could have just stayed put and got Harold Landry, who I think is a better prospect. So we'll see how that all plays out. There's no denying Davenport's a freak, but he basically has to become like DeMarcus Ware for that trade to be worth it. And that's a good comparison for him. He's a similar size, physical freak, but a small school guy. It's kind of unknown how he's going to be as an instant impact for a team looking to win right now. We'll see. I think he's going to be pretty solid. It's not like he's got to be the number 1 with Jordan there. He's not going to attract a ton of attention, so we'll have to wait and see how that all plays out. You also got Trey Hendrickson, a 3rd round pick from last year, on the rotation. And then on the inside for run defense, Sheldon Rankins, Tyler Davidson, David Onyemata. Really good group of 3 there. These guys are all going to rotate. A pretty underrated group in terms of run defense. Not getting a whole lot of pass rush. Sheldon Rankins, a guy that I really liked coming out. Maybe he can take another step forward in his 2nd season being healthy here and start to become sort of a Muhammad Wilkerson type of player who can contribute in run defense but also rush the passer. Not sure why Wilkerson is the name that came up with. A lot of examples of guys like that, but you get the point. And then at linebacker, this was a position of weakness for this team last year. I don't think it's necessarily a strength this year, but underrated is the addition of Demario Davis. He's going to come in and instantly be this team's best linebacker. Really solid in coverage, really good athlete, just going to add a lot to the second level of this defense. Some athleticism that I think they're missing in Manti Te'o, run defending guy, AJ Klein, whatever, Craig Robertson, Alex Anzalone, Nathan Stupar. It's whatever. If this defense is good, it's not going to be because of these linebackers, it's because of the pass rush and the secondary. Though I do think attacking the middle of the field away from Demario Davis could prove to be problematic for this team. But let's talk about the secondary. Marshawn Lattimore, already I think a top 10 corner in this league, going to have to continue to prove it, but it's hard to look at his film from last year and what he was able to do and not expect that he's still going to be a damn good corner this year. He could have a drop-off from last year and still be a top 10 corner. He played that well. Then you got Ken Crawley, will be starting on the other side, PJ Williams, a couple of sort of no-name guys that actually play a little better than you might expect. And then they do sign Patrick Robinson. Good signing to get a stud starting nickel corner in here. He'll plug right in there. And he is going to help with sort of the middle of the field intermediate passing game that I mentioned is going to be a weakness for these linebackers. Patrick Robinson is going to be able to help out with that stuff. And then at safety, you got Marcus Williams, absolute stud rookie. Don't mind the embarrassing non-tackle on Stephon Diggs. Outside of that, he was one of the best safeties in football last year, forget being a rookie. So I think they're excited to get him back, let him start to make some plays again and put that behind him. Is there a chance that he can't overcome that? I think he's too good of a player to let that ruin his career, but we'll see. There is a bit of a mental hurdle there to get rid of after that. And then you got Kurt Coleman, veteran safety, Von Bell, run defending guy, a pretty big liability in coverage actually, and then Chris Banjo managing to make a roster spot on this team. Kind of a journeyman, under the radar guy. So that wraps up the roster review. As far as coach and culture is concerned, I've got them tied for 4th. Not really going to get into that. We know Sean Payton can coach. So let's get into the schedule here. The first half of the schedule is pretty rough. You do get to start with Tampa Bay and Cleveland at home, so that's about as easy of a start as you can ask for. But at Atlanta, at the Giants, at Baltimore, at Minnesota, all in the first half of the season, those are pretty tough. And then Washington at home and the Rams at home, those teams aren't pushovers either. So I think you look at the 9.5 win total for this team that I thought was really low, because I do think this is a really good football team. I think it's lower because there is a chance with that starting schedule that this team might start 4-4, 3-5 even. I think they can get through it, go 5-3, and then the second half of the schedule is so much easier. I've got them finishing the season 8-1, losing to Philadelphia with a question mark there. But when all's said and done, I just think this team's got enough talent to get to that 12-win mark. I do like the over for this team. It only pays -140 though, so that's not the best. And that's really going to do it for this video. So, Saints fans, what do you think? Is this too high, too low? Hit that like button if you enjoyed the video, if you're enjoying this deep dive series that is just about done. One more episode. Season starts on Thursday. So cheers as always, guys, and we'll see you for the next one.